When I saw the sold sign hammered into the front lawn of my childhood home, I thought I'd finally made peace with the past. But then I saw the man who bought it, and something about the way he stood there, staring at the windows, made my stomach twist. He wasn't looking at the architecture, or the yard, or the little porch swing my father built with his bare hands. He was looking through the house. As if he already knew what was inside. I told myself it was just nostalgia, that I was being silly. I hadn't lived there in over 20 years. But the truth is, that house was the last piece of my parents I had left. They both passed before I turned 30, and selling it wasn't easy. Still, life demanded practical choices, taxes, maintenance, loneliness. So, after months of guilt and hesitation, I let it go. The realtor said the buyer's name was Mark Ellison, a quiet man, pays in cash, wants privacy. Something about that description bothered me. But I signed the papers anyway, trying not to think too much. A few days later, I drove out one last time, just to see it before the new owner moved in. That's when I saw him. Standing by the garden fence I'd helped my mother paint, years ago. He had his hands in his pockets, staring at the window of my old bedroom. He didn't notice me at first, but when he did, he smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile that recognizes you. I froze. He lifted his hand, almost like a wave, then lowered it, slow, deliberate. Something in that gesture sent a chill crawling up my spine. I drove away, telling myself not to be paranoid. It was just a man admiring his new house. That's what I told myself, over and over, until the dream started. The house had always been a symbol of my childhood. A small, sunlit place tucked at the edge of a quiet neighborhood in Ohio. It smelled like lemon oil and my mother's lavender candles. In the summers, I'd lie on the creaky wooden floor, watching dust dance in the light. Every corner held a memory, the dent in the stair rail from when my brother fell off his skateboard, the faint pencil marks on the wall measuring my height each year. After my parents passed, I couldn't bear to live there. But I couldn't bear to sell it, either. For almost a decade, I kept it locked and untouched, like a shrine to who we once were. Life eventually moved on. I got married. Then divorced. The years blurred into routine, work, bills, quiet dinners alone. Selling the house felt like closing a chapter I'd been stuck rereading. But closure has a way of tricking you. Sometimes it isn't an ending, it's just a pause before the past comes knocking again. The first letter arrived 2 weeks after the sale. It was slipped under my apartment door, in an unmarked envelope. No stamp. No address. Just my name, handwritten in a way that made my skin prickle. Inside was a single photograph. It was the house. Taken from the street. At night. All the windows were dark, except one. My old bedroom. There was no note. Just the picture. I stared at it for what felt like an hour, my mind racing for an explanation. Maybe the realtor sent it accidentally? Maybe a prank? But deep down, I knew. The man from the fence. Mark Ellison. The next morning, I called the realtor. She told me Mark had moved in the week before and had asked not to be disturbed. I didn't say anything about the photo. I just thanked her and hung up. For the next few days, I tried to push it out of my mind. Work was busy. My boss had me managing a new project, and I buried myself in it. But every night, before bed, I found myself scrolling through old pictures of the house, of me and my parents in front of it, my dad holding me up on his shoulders, my mom laughing behind the camera. It was stupid, really. I thought selling the house would help me move on. Instead, it made me feel more connected to it than ever. Then, one Saturday morning, I noticed something strange. On my walk to the corner cafe, a dark sedan was parked across from my building. The driver's seat was empty, or at least, it looked that way from a distance. I wouldn't have thought much of it if it hadn't been there the next morning. And the morning after that. Same car. Same spot. Tinted windows. One evening, as I was unlocking my door, I looked back down the street. Headlights flickered on. The car pulled away slowly, like it had been waiting for me to go inside. My breath hitched. I called the police that night, but without proof or a license plate number, there wasn't much they could do. Maybe it's a neighbor, the officer suggested gently. Someone who works late. Try not to worry. But I was worried. Because I'd seen that car before, parked outside my parents' old house the day I signed the sale contract. I started losing sleep. Every creak in my apartment made me jump. I stopped walking to the cafe and began ordering groceries online. I told myself I was imagining it, stress, nostalgia, loneliness, all blending into paranoia. But when I received the second letter, I knew it wasn't my imagination. This time, there was a note inside. Written in the same slanted handwriting. It feels like you never really left. No name. No address. Just that sentence. And below it, another photograph. Of me. Standing outside the cafe, coffee in hand. Taken from across the street. I remember sitting there, the note trembling in my hand, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. How long had he been following me? Why me? And why that house? I didn't know it yet, but that was just the beginning. The real horror wasn't that he'd bought my childhood home. It was what he found inside it. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the kitchen window, lights off, clutching my phone like a lifeline. Every noise, every gust of wind against the glass, made my chest tighten. At some point, I thought about calling my ex-husband, Daniel. We hadn't spoken in nearly 2 years, but he'd always been the calm one. He used to say I felt things too deeply, like it was both a compliment and a warning. But I couldn't bring myself to dial. What would I even say? Hi, Daniel. Someone's stalking me, and they bought my childhood home. No. He'd think I was being dramatic. So instead, I sat in silence and watched the sky change from black to gray. By morning, I decided to do something, anything, to feel in control again. I went to the police station, photo and letter in hand. The officer at the desk, a young man who looked barely out of training, frowned as he scanned the page. Creepy, he said under his breath, but there's not much we can do without a direct threat. Maybe install some cameras around your place? His tone was kind, but detached. Like he'd seen worse. And maybe he had. But to me, this was worse. Because it wasn't random, it was personal. I left the station feeling smaller than when I'd entered. That weekend, I drove out to the old house again. I told myself it was just to reassure myself, to prove that Mark Ellison was just a normal man with bad social skills. But the moment I turned onto Willow Creek Road, I felt it, that deep, instinctive unease that hums beneath your ribs. The house looked different. The garden my mother loved had been cut down. The shutters, once soft blue, were now painted a dull gray. And the front door, my father's solid oak door, had been replaced with metal. Still, I parked across the street, pretending to check my phone, but really just watching. After a few minutes, the door opened. Mark stepped out. He was tall, maybe mid-40s, with a close-cropped haircut and a stillness that made him seem older. He wore a dark sweater despite the heat, and even from a distance, I could see his eyes. Cold. Steady. He didn't look surprised to see me. He looked like he expected me. He crossed the lawn slowly, stopping at the edge of the driveway. "You shouldn't be here," he said. His voice was calm, even polite, but there was something off about it, too measured, like he'd rehearsed it. "I just wanted to see the house," I said, trying to sound casual. "It's sentimental." He studied me for a moment. Then, with a faint smile, said, "It still feels like you." The words hit me like a whisper in the dark. "What do you mean?" I asked. But he didn't answer. He just turned and walked back inside, closing the door gently behind him. I sat in my car for a long time after that, staring at the gray shutters, my pulse pounding in my ears. "It still feels like you." What did that even mean? Over the next few days, small things started happening. A voicemail, heavy breathing, then silence. A bouquet of lilies left on my doorstep, my mother's favorite flowers, without a card. A text from an unknown number. Did you sleep well? Each incident felt like a thread, and together they were weaving something suffocating around me. I changed my phone number. I even moved in with a friend, Sarah, who was kind enough not to ask too many questions. But even then, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Sometimes, I'd catch a flicker of movement outside the window. Other times, I'd feel a vibration in my pocket, a phantom notification, and my heart would leap. The worst part was how normal everything looked. The sun still rose, neighbors still walked their dogs, the world carried on. But inside me, everything was wrong. Then came the third envelope. This one was thicker. Heavier. No name, no address, just the same slanted handwriting. Inside were 3 photographs, all of me. One sitting in my car outside his house. One walking to the grocery store. And one, inside my apartment. It was taken from behind me. I was sitting on the couch, looking at my phone, the same phone that was now slipping from my trembling hands. How could he have gotten inside? I called Sarah, my voice shaking, and she came over within minutes. Together, we checked every window, every lock, every inch of that small apartment. Nothing was broken. Nothing was missing. But something invisible had been taken, my sense of safety. We filed another police report. They took it more seriously this time, promising to look into it. But looking into it didn't mean stopping it. That night, I couldn't stay there. I packed a small bag and drove, aimlessly, without thinking, until I found myself back on Willow Creek Road. I parked across from the house again, engine off, watching. All the lights were on inside, though it was nearly 2 a.m. Through the curtains, I could see movement, slow, deliberate. A figure pacing. Then, for a second, I saw something that made my heart stop. Pinned to the wall of the living room, my mother's family portrait. The one I'd left in the attic years ago. How did he have that? And why was it on display? I should have left. I should have called the police again, right then and there. But I didn't. Because the part of me that still loved that house, that still believed in what it once meant, couldn't bear the thought of someone defiling it. So I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, until the lights in the house flicked off, one by one. Then I whispered to myself, tomorrow. Tomorrow, I'll go back. But tomorrow would bring something far worse. Because the next time I saw the house, it wasn't from my car. It was from inside, when I found the door already open. It was a gray Sunday morning when I drove back to Willow Creek Road. The sky looked like it had forgotten how to shine. Even the air felt heavy, still, the kind of quiet that hums right before a storm. I told myself I just needed to see for myself that everything was fine. That I hadn't lost my mind. But deep down, I think I already knew what I'd find. The street was empty when I arrived. Mark's car, that black sedan, was parked crooked in the driveway, the front tire resting against the curb. The engine was cold, but the driver's door was slightly ajar. I hesitated, my hand hovering over my phone. I could have called the police. Should have. But the silence around me felt almost magnetic, pulling me forward. The front gate creaked as I pushed it open. The sound sent a shiver down my arms. I stepped onto the porch. The metal door, that awful, soulless door that replaced my father's, was cracked open an inch. Hello? I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. No answer. I pushed the door open. The smell hit me first, old wood, dust, and something faintly metallic. Inside, the air was thick, stale, unmoving. And then I saw it. My childhood home, or what was left of it. Every wall, every corner, was covered with photographs. Hundreds of them. Me as a child. Me as a teenager. Me as an adult. Some were pictures I remembered, old family photos, birthdays, vacations, but others were new. recent, intimate. Pictures of me sleeping, cooking, standing by my apartment window. Each one pinned carefully, almost lovingly, in rows that filled the entire living room. A shrine. I took a step back, my knees trembling. There, above the fireplace, hung a framed photograph of my parents, the one that used to sit on my mother's nightstand. And beneath it, scrawled on the wall in black marker, "I'll take care of you now." My breath caught in my throat. That's when I heard it, the sound of footsteps from upstairs. Slow. Deliberate. Every muscle in my body went rigid. I turned toward the staircase. "Mark?" I whispered. "Mark Ellison?" The steps stopped. Then, after a long silence, a voice floated down. Calm. Steady. "You came home." I froze where I stood. He appeared at the top of the stairs, barefoot, dressed in the same dark sweater I'd seen before. His expression was almost serene, like he was genuinely happy to see me. "I told you," he said softly. "It still feels like you. Why are you doing this?" My voice cracked. "Why these pictures? Why me?" He tilted his head slightly, studying me like I was the one behaving strangely. "Because it is you," he said. "This house remembers you. Every sound, every smell. You belong here. I just brought it back. I don't even know you." I shouted, my voice trembling between fear and rage. He took a slow step down the stairs. "You don't remember me," he said. "But I remember you." Something about the way he said it made my stomach twist. "Remember you?" I echoed. "What are you talking about?" He smiled faintly. "Third grade. You lived next door to my aunt. You used to draw chalk hearts on the sidewalk. I kept one of them. You said I could." My mind scrambled backward through decades of memories, schoolyards, summers, faces long forgotten. There was a boy. Quiet, awkward, always sitting by himself at the edge of the playground. He used to watch me and my friends jump rope, never joining in. His name was Martin? Marcus? "Mark," I whispered. He smiled wider, almost boyishly. "You do remember." The room seemed to tilt around me. I took a step back. That was 30 years ago. I was a child. He nodded slowly. "You were kind to me," he said. "Everyone else laughed. But you smiled. You gave me that heart, remember? You said keep it, so you don't forget me." His voice softened, almost reverent. I never did. I wanted to scream, to run, to do anything but stand there, frozen. But something about the way he looked at me, like he was reliving some sacred memory, rooted me in place. "You broke into my apartment," I said, my voice shaking. He didn't deny it. "I needed to see you," he murmured. "You stopped coming here. The house missed you." "I missed you." "You're sick," I whispered. He looked hurt by that, genuinely hurt. No. No, I'm devoted. I made it all the way you left it. Look." He gestured around the room. And suddenly, I noticed it. The layout, the furniture, everything mirrored how it had been when my parents were alive. The floral couch. The lamp by the window. Even the rug, the one my mother ruined with red wine one Thanksgiving. All of it was back. "How did you?" I began, but my voice faltered. "I found the pictures online," he said simply. "Estate records. Old social media. I wanted it to be perfect for you." He took another step forward. "You don't have to live alone anymore." I stumbled backward, my hand brushing against the doorknob. "Stay away from me," I said. "I'm calling the police." He stopped. The smile slipped from his face. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then, quietly, he said, "They won't help you. They don't understand what this place means." But you do. And before I could respond, he reached into his pocket. Something metallic glinted in his hand. I ran. I don't remember how I got to my car. I just remember the sound of gravel crunching under my feet, my breath ragged, the slam of the door as I locked myself inside. He didn't chase me. He just stood on the porch, watching, his expression calm again, almost gentle. As I sped away, I saw him in the rearview mirror, slowly raising his hand. Not waving. Just lifting it, the same slow, deliberate gesture from the day we met. That night, I didn't go home. I checked into a motel on the edge of town and called the police again, this time shaking so badly I could barely form words. They sent an officer to the house. An hour later, I got a call. "There's no one there," the officer said. "No Mark Ellison. No photographs. No trace of anything unusual." "What do you mean?" I whispered. "It's all over the walls. The pictures, the writing." "Ma'am," he interrupted gently, "the place is empty. Bare. Looks like no one's lived there in months." I sat on the edge of the motel bed, the phone pressed to my ear, listening to the sound of my own heartbeat. Empty. Bare. Months. But I had seen it. I had seen him. So why did the house look untouched? I didn't sleep at all that night. The motel's neon sign blinked through the curtains, vacancy, washing the room in a rhythm of pale red light. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the phone on the nightstand, replaying every word the officer had said. Empty. Bare. Months. It didn't make sense. I'd seen him. I'd smelled the dust. I'd touched the walls lined with my photographs. By morning, I was caught between fear and disbelief. Had I imagined it? Had grief and nostalgia twisted reality so deeply that I'd created a ghost of my own past? But then I opened my bag to grab my charger, and saw it. Tucked between my clothes was one of the photographs from the wall. A picture of me as a little girl, sitting on the porch steps, holding a melting ice cream cone. I hadn't packed it. I stared at it for a long time. Then I whispered to myself, he was there. And I knew what I had to do. The police might not believe me. But I wasn't about to let this man rewrite my past, or use it to haunt me. So I drove back to Willow Creek Road. This time, I didn't park across the street. I parked right in the driveway. The air was colder than it should have been for spring. The sky hung low, heavy with clouds, as if the house itself was holding its breath. I approached the front door, still metal, still cold, and tried the handle. Locked. I circled to the back. The kitchen window had been covered with plywood. But the side window, the one by the dining room, was loose. I pressed my hand against it and pushed. It gave way with a soft groan. I climbed inside. The moment my feet touched the floor, something shifted inside me. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was anger. This was my home. My parents' laughter had lived in these walls. My childhood had unfolded in these rooms. And now some stranger, some obsessed man, had turned it into a shrine. I turned on my phone flashlight. The beam swept across the room and froze. Everything was gone. Just as the police had said. Bare floors. Empty walls. Dust and cobwebs in the corners. It looked abandoned. But when I stepped farther in, I noticed something odd, faint outlines on the wall. Rectangular shapes, slightly lighter than the paint around them. The kind of marks left behind when pictures had been hanging there. I knelt down. The floorboards creaked softly. That's when I saw it, a small scrap of paper wedged between two planks. I pulled it free. It was a torn corner of a photograph. My face, cut diagonally across. And on the back, in that same slanted handwriting. You shouldn't have left me. My chest tightened. I stumbled backward, my flashlight shaking. That's when I heard it, the faint hum of an engine outside. Through the window, headlights glowed across the lawn. I froze. A car door shut. Footsteps. Panic shot through me. I ducked behind the kitchen counter, holding my breath. The front door creaked open. "Why did you come back?" His voice was calm, like we were having a normal conversation. "I told you, you don't need to be afraid." I gripped my phone so tightly my knuckles ached. He walked farther in, his shoes crunching faintly on the dust-covered floor. "You ruined it," he said softly. "I made it perfect for you." "And you told them?" "You told them I was crazy." I rose slowly from behind the counter, my heart hammering in my throat. "Mark," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You need help." "We both do. But you can't do this." He turned toward me. His eyes glistened in the flashlight's glow. "Do what?" he asked, genuinely confused. "I gave you back your home." "This isn't my home anymore," I said, my voice breaking. "It stopped being my home when my parents died." "You can't build love out of someone else's grief." For the first time, his expression faltered. A flicker of something, pain, maybe, crossed his face. He took a slow step closer. "Then where will you go?" he whispered. "Who will remember you?" "I will," I said quietly. "That's enough." His jaw clenched. "No, it's not." Then he lunged. I bolted for the door, my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear my own scream. He grabbed my arm, but years of fear turned into pure instinct. I swung my elbow back, catching him in the ribs, and tore free. The night outside hit me like cold water. I sprinted toward my car, fumbling for the keys. Behind me, I heard him calling, not yelling, but pleading. "Please. Don't leave again." The engine roared to life. I slammed my foot on the gas. Gravel flew behind me as I sped down the dark road, his figure shrinking in the rearview mirror until it vanished completely. I drove straight to the police station, shaking so badly I could barely park. This time, I refused to be dismissed. I showed them the photo scrap, the messages, the photos I'd saved on my phone. I gave them his name, his description, everything. By dawn, 2 officers were already on their way to the house. When they returned, one of them looked at me with something like pity. "Ma'am," he said softly, "we found the car in the woods behind the property." My stomach dropped. "Was he?" He nodded. "He's gone. Looks like he ended things himself." For a long moment, I couldn't breathe. I didn't know whether to cry or collapse. But as they led me to a chair and handed me a glass of water, something inside me felt hollow. It wasn't relief. It wasn't peace. It was sadness. For him. For the boy who'd once been kind and lonely, and for the man who'd turned that loneliness into obsession. I thought about that chalk heart I'd drawn all those years ago, how something so small could echo through time, twisting into something unrecognizable. Sometimes, kindness lingers in ways we can't control. That night, I went home, truly home, for the first time in months. I double-locked the door, sat on my couch, and let the silence settle around me. But as I reached to turn off the lamp, I noticed something on the coffee table. A single white lily. Fresh. Its petals still damp. For the next few days, my world blurred into police statements, phone calls, and an endless hum of questions. They searched the woods, the house, his car. Everything. And though the officer told me they found sufficient evidence, photographs, letters, even an old school yearbook with my picture circled in red ink, the only thing that haunted me was the lily. Fresh. New. Left after he was supposedly gone. It sat in a plastic evidence bag on my counter now, a silent reminder that some stories don't end neatly. The police called it a coincidence. Maybe someone else had left it. Maybe I'd missed it before. But deep down, I knew. Mark Ellison, or whatever his name truly was, had planned everything. Every move, every message, every coincidence. Even his exit. Within a week, the story spread. Local news ran a small segment titled, Man found deceased after obsession with former homeowner. I didn't watch it. But people did. The next morning, my inbox was full: reporters, true crime bloggers, strangers offering sympathy or curiosity disguised as kindness. Even my ex-husband, Daniel, texted. Daniel, I saw the news. Are you okay? Me, trying to be. Daniel, I should have called sooner. I'm sorry. His words landed like soft raindrops on dry earth, too late to save anything, but gentle enough to remind me what real concern sounded like. I tried to return to normal life, but normal no longer fit. I couldn't walk past a window without checking the reflection. Couldn't hear footsteps in the hallway without my stomach tightening. At work, whispers followed me like shadows. Is that her? I overheard one colleague murmur in the break room. The woman from the story? I wanted to tell them I wasn't just a headline, that I was a person, trying to breathe again. But I didn't. Because the truth was, I wasn't sure who I was anymore. Was I the woman who survived? Or the woman who kept looking back? A few days later, I received a call from an older officer named Detective Halloran, a man with a voice like worn leather. He asked if I could come to the station. There's something we need you to see, he said. When I arrived, he led me to a small evidence room. On the table were several boxes. Recovered from the house, he said. He handed me a folder first. Inside were property papers, forged, all in Mark's handwriting. He had fabricated entire documents, pretending to be different buyers, different signatures. He'd planned the purchase of my childhood home for years. Then Halloran passed me a small, worn notebook. I hesitated before opening it. Inside, in tight, meticulous writing, were entries. Dozens of them. Most were dated years before he ever bought the house. Saw her walking by the park. Same smile. The house is empty. I'll bring it back to life for her. She'll understand one day. She'll come home. Page after page, his voice on paper. Obsessive. Gentle. Delusional. And then the last entry. Dated the day before I confronted him. She doesn't see what I built for her. She doesn't remember. Maybe she will when I'm gone. My throat tightened as I read. The room seemed to fade around me, replaced by the image of that quiet man on the porch, staring at the house that once held all my memories. Do you want us to keep it? Halloran asked quietly. I shook my head. No, I said. Burn it. The next week, I attended the small memorial the town organized. Not for him, but for what had been lost. The house, the safety, the illusion of time standing still. Standing by the empty lot, I felt both grief and gratitude. Grief for the life that man had wasted chasing a memory. Gratitude that I still had the chance to build new ones. The police had demolished the house, said it was unsafe, that it had been structurally compromised. I didn't argue. As I watched the ground where my childhood home once stood, I thought about how places can hold echoes, not just of the people we loved, but of those who never let go. Sometimes, the ghosts that haunt us are still breathing. In the weeks that followed, people moved on. The news cycle shifted. My neighbors stopped asking questions. My colleagues stopped whispering. But I didn't move on. Not right away. I started therapy, something I should have done years ago. I began walking again, one cautious step at a time, without looking over my shoulder. And one morning, for the first time in months, I drove out to the lake where my parents used to take me fishing as a child. The water was calm. The sky was wide and forgiving. And when I closed my eyes, I didn't see his face anymore. I saw theirs. Their laughter. Their warmth. The home they gave me, not in walls or wood, but in memory. But healing isn't linear. A month later, I received one final envelope. No return address. No handwriting this time, printed, typed neatly. Inside was a single piece of paper. I'm glad you're home. No signature. just that sentence. For a long while I stared at it, waiting for fear to return. But instead, I felt still. Maybe it was someone cruel, trying to stir old wounds. Maybe it was him, sending one last echo through time. Either way, I refused to let it take root again. I tore the paper in half, then in half again, and watched the pieces drift into the lake. The wind caught them, scattering them like ashes. That night, I realized something. He hadn't stolen my home. He'd only reminded me what it truly was. Because a home isn't the walls that keep you in, it's the courage that lets you walk away. And for the first time in my life, I did. It took months before I could look at a house without feeling its history pressing against me. Even when I moved into my new place, a small 2-bedroom cottage on the edge of town, I found myself standing at the doorway, hesitant to cross the threshold. I remember whispering to myself that first night. This is my home now. Not a memory. Not a ghost. Mine. I'd chosen it deliberately, not near the old neighborhood, not near anything that reminded me of the past. The floors creaked differently, the windows faced the sunrise instead of the street, and the smell was fresh, not the haunting blend of old wood and lilac that used to fill the air. At first, silence felt strange. It made me uneasy, like the pause before something breaks. But over time, silence became my companion, not a warning, but a comfort. Therapy helped more than I expected. My therapist, a kind woman named Clara, never rushed me to move on. She just listened. There was one session where she asked, "What did that house mean to you before he bought it?" I thought for a long moment before answering. It meant safety. Family. The last place where I felt completely seen. She nodded, writing something down, and said, "And what does it mean now?" I hesitated again. "Closure," I said. "Even if it wasn't the kind I wanted." She smiled gently. "That's still healing." I started rebuilding the small, forgotten rituals that used to make life feel full, making tea before bed, calling my brother on Sundays, planting herbs in the kitchen window. Each small act felt like reclaiming a part of myself. The nightmares didn't vanish overnight. Sometimes I'd still wake to the creak of the floorboards in my mind, to the faint image of that man standing under the porch light. But each time, I'd remind myself. He's gone. I'm still here. It became a kind of mantra, a quiet defiance. A few months later, I decided to return to teaching art classes at the community center. It was a small space filled with laughter, paint stains, and the soft chatter of students who reminded me that not all attention is dangerous, that sometimes, being seen can be healing. One afternoon, a young woman lingered after class. She was shy, maybe 20, and she asked if she could show me something. From her bag, she pulled out a small sketch, a house on a hill, drawn in soft pencil strokes. "It's where I grew up," she said. "We had to move after my mom passed. I draw it when I miss her." For a second, I couldn't breathe. Then I smiled and said softly, "It's beautiful. You should never be afraid to remember a place, just don't live in it." Her eyes lifted, curious. "What do you mean?" "Memories are like houses," I said. "You visit them sometimes, dust off the corners, but you don't lock yourself inside." She nodded, and for the first time in a long while, I felt peace in giving advice I had earned the hardest way possible. Spring came quietly that year. The air smelled of rain and lilacs again, the same scent that once haunted me. But now, it just smelled like renewal. I stood outside one morning, coffee in hand, watching the sun spill over the fields. The world was quiet, still, unthreatening. And that's when it hit me. Home wasn't a structure, a name on a deed, or the echoes of a past I couldn't change. Home was this, the warmth of morning light, the sound of birds waking, the peace of knowing I was finally safe within myself. Sometimes, I still drive by the street where it all happened. The lot where my childhood house once stood is empty now, wildflowers have started to grow there. The town never rebuilt, and maybe that's for the best. There's something comforting about seeing nature reclaim what obsession once tried to own. I don't stop the car. I don't need to. But every time I pass, I whisper a quiet prayer, not for him, but for the girl I once was. The one who believed she could never face the past. Because she did. And she survived. Healing, I've learned, isn't about forgetting. It's about remembering differently. It's about standing in the same light that once terrified you, and realizing it doesn't burn anymore. And that's where I am now. No longer haunted. Just human. Still healing. Still home. Sometimes, when I think about everything that happened, the house, the man, the fear that wrapped itself around my days, I don't feel anger anymore. I feel understanding. Because now I see that what he wanted wasn't just me. It was belonging. And that's the most dangerous kind of hunger, when someone mistakes obsession for love, or a house for a home. He thought he could rebuild what time had taken. But home isn't something you can recreate out of wood and memory. It's something you carry within you, in the people you love, the lessons you learn, and the peace you choose, even after the storm. I've learned that you can't protect your past from being revisited, but you can protect your future from being stolen by it. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do isn't to fight the ghosts. It's to forgive them, and walk away. Because walking away is its own kind of strength. Now, when I sit by my window in the evenings, I let the world grow quiet again. I light a candle. I write in my journal. And I remind myself, this is home. Not the one he tried to claim. Not the one I lost. But the one I built, piece by piece, from everything that could have broken me. Tell me. If you were in my place. If a stranger tried to rewrite the story of your home. Would you have gone back to face it? Or would you have left it behind forever? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if my story touched something in you, stay a while. There are more stories like this one, of heartbreak, survival, and finding peace where there once was pain. Because sometimes, the hardest stories to tell are the ones that finally set us free. Candle, thank you for listening. This was my story.